The film begins with Rachel, a devoted wife, waiting for her husband, Ty, and calling him for dinner. She grows sad after receiving no response and spends the night worried. The next morning, her daughter, Ella, asks about her father, but Rachel can't provide a comforting answer. Ty is a teacher, so Rachel rushes to his school. After a brief meeting with the principal, she learns Ty hasn't shown up there either. Concerned, she seeks advice from her best friend, Jess, who suggests calling the police. Hesitant at first, Rachel contacts them, and soon Detective Ferguson visits her. After general questions, he learns the couple is happily married. She takes him to the garage, which Ty uses as his man cave, but Ferguson finds nothing suspicious. Outside, Ferguson asks Rachel if her husband had an affair, but she firmly denies it. Moments later, Ferguson's colleague, Roper, arrives, and Ferguson instructs him to gather information about Ty while he questions the neighbors. Ferguson meets Dee Dee, the nosy neighbor, who praises Ty and Ella but clearly dislikes Rachel. She informs Ferguson about Rachel's miscarriage and her extended hospitalization due to mental health issues. Ferguson then visits Ty's school and, after getting little useful information from the principal, speaks to Ty's students. From two girls, Brittany and Kenna, Ferguson learns Ty is overly friendly with female students, even allowing them to call him by his first name. The next day, Jess advises Rachel not to stress herself, as she's been through a lot. Rachel reassures her she's fine and is staying busy with tasks Ty assigned her. Detective Ferguson and Roper arrive, informing Rachel that Ty has been officially declared missing. They plan to distribute his picture to all departments and city exit points. They warn Rachel about media attention and advise her not to make any statements. Ferguson and Roper search Ty's man cave, finding Rachel's antidepressants, which raises suspicions. Meanwhile, Rachel confides in Jess, expressing her belief that Ty was disappointed in her due to her mental health struggles and the burden of being a single parent to Ella. She also mentions his grief over losing the son he always wanted. Jess comforts her, but after Rachel leaves, Roper questions Jess about Rachel. Jess reveals they've been best friends for over 5 years, but refuses to share personal details about Rachel's life. Roper receives a call and meets two of Ty's students, who lead him to Ty's school card. Roper collects it as evidence. The next day, Ferguson brings forensics to Rachel's house, making it clear she's a suspect. Rachel leaves with Ella, allowing them to search freely. Ferguson finds more antidepressants in her bedside drawer. Meanwhile, forensics find and document numerous alcohol bottles. Later, Rachel returns home, and Roper is shocked to see she's gotten her hair done, seemingly unconcerned about her missing husband. Rachel is drinking when Jess sends her a link to an article accusing her of being responsible for Ty's disappearance. She checks online and finds numerous articles with video evidence suggesting her guilt. Rachel becomes upset, but hears a knock at the door. She answers and finds an annoying reporter questioning her about Ty and the search party, but she can't respond. Meanwhile, at the police station, Ferguson and Roper review the case, but find no signs of foul play. Ferguson speculates Ty was persuaded to leave without violence. However, based on Rachel's calm behavior, Roper suggests she's involved in Ty's disappearance. But Ferguson warns him against jumping to conclusions. He tells Roper to start from the beginning, or they'll be seen as lazy. Suddenly, Rachel arrives and confronts them. Ferguson tries to calm her, but she's furious about the reporter at her door, the online articles, and the search party being kept secret from her. Later, Rachel confides in Jess about her struggles without Ty and thanks her for supporting her family. Rachel initially refuses to join the search party, as people already suspect her, but Jess urges her to participate for obvious reasons. Meanwhile, Brittany catches Kenna staring at Ty's pictures, hinting she has feelings for him. Brittany jokes if Kenna has hidden Ty to keep him from his wife, but Kenna denies it. Later, Rachel approaches the students, thanking them for joining the search party, but ends up making the situation awkward. At night, Roper checks Kenna's Twitter profile and finds posts about Ty's disappearance. One video suggests she's been following Rachel, raising suspicions. The next day, Roper questions Kenna and Brittany about Ty, while Rachel remains silent. When asked about Rachel, Brittany reveals Ty often called her crazy. Roper probes Kenna about her relationship with Ty, but she stays silent and is allowed to leave. Rachel asks Jess to look after Ella while she visits her lawyer. Meanwhile, Roper meets the school janitor, who mentions seeing Ty with a real estate agent multiple times. He recognizes the woman from a bus station ad, but refuses to give her name. Rachel meets her friend and lawyer, Dylan, and explains her situation. Dylan warns that the police will try to frame her and search for a motive. He advises her to act like a grieving, heartbroken wife, which is her best option. Outside Dylan's office, Ferguson receives a call from Roper, who has discovered a 4-year-old restraining order against Ty, filed by a real estate agent named Palmer. Rachel returns home to find Ferguson waiting. He asks her to come to the station, where she sits with her lawyer, Dylan. Ferguson and Roper present a restraining order filed against Ty by a real estate agent named Palmer. Rachel recognizes it, but insists it's old and denies harming Palmer. Roper then reveals Ty's blood-covered wallet, found in Rachel's bed, shocking both Rachel and Dylan. They question her about her history of violent tendencies, and Rachel admits she struggled with self-harm but denies harming anyone else. As the interrogation continues, Rachel declares, "I didn't kill Ty," which raises suspicion. Ferguson points out they never mentioned Ty was dead, further implicating her. In the evening, Rachel puts Ella to bed and talks to Jess. Jess asks about Palmer, and Rachel explains that Ty ended things with her 5 years ago and that she forgave him long ago. Rachel tries to understand what's happening, but feels Jess is blaming her for Ty's disappearance. Rachel becomes upset and asks Jess to leave. Later, Ferguson and Roper discuss the case. While Roper blames Rachel, Ferguson defends her, stating there's no standard way for spouses to act when their partners go missing. Roper mentions the wallet, but Ferguson believes anyone could have planted it. However, he grows suspicious of Kenna, thinking she's obsessed with Ty. The next day, Dylan meets Rachel and urges her to address the public, but she hesitates. Dylan convinces her, but as she tries to speak to the media, the irritating reporter taunts her, making her nervous by threatening police involvement. Rachel becomes flustered and retreats. Inside, Dylan advises her to leave the house, but Rachel says she has nowhere to go, as they sold their mountain cabin for her treatment. Meanwhile, Ferguson meets Palmer and learns Ty is still in a relationship with her, but that she's pregnant with a son. Palmer explains the baby is why she recently met Ty. That evening, Ferguson meets Roper, who is more convinced than ever that Rachel is behind everything, citing her motive to avenge Ty's betrayal. Ferguson remains skeptical, but allows Roper to pursue an arrest warrant if he insists. Roper obtains the warrant and arrests Rachel at her house, while Jess promises to care for Ella. Later, Ella struggles to sleep when Jess approaches her, seemingly acting as though she's always wanted to replace Rachel. She puts Ella to bed, and Ty appears. Jess hugs him, revealing they conspired to frame Rachel. They're thrilled Rachel has been arrested, and Ty promises Jess a perfect life once Rachel is permanently imprisoned. He hands her another one of Rachel's prescriptions, instructing her to plant it in Ella's room. Finally, he tells Jess to bring Rachel to the mountain cabin by any means. Meanwhile, Ferguson and Roper interrogate Rachel about Ty, but she insists she's innocent. Roper brings up her visits to the funeral home and insurance company, but Rachel explains she was depositing funds for Ty's mother, who died 3 months ago. She clarifies it was a task assigned to her before Ty vanished. Ferguson then questions her about Ty's relationship with Palmer, and Rachel says he ended it long ago. She's shocked to learn they've been seeing each other all along and that Palmer is pregnant with Ty's child. Suddenly, Dylan arrives with Rachel's release orders. At the same time, Kenna sneaks into Ty's house, and Dee Dee spots her, calling Ferguson. When Ferguson arrives, Dee Dee shares details about the girl sneaking into Ty's house. Ferguson thanks her and leaves. Later, Ferguson confronts Kenna at her school and requests a private conversation. He questions her about the previous night. Initially, she denies everything. Ferguson mentions her online posts and threatens her. Kenna eventually confesses, admitting she went there to retrieve her friendship bracelet so the police wouldn't find it. Ferguson questions whether Ty has harmed her, but she insists nothing happened and leaves. Later, Rachel meets Jess and expresses her gratitude. Jess tries to manipulate her into going to the cabin, but fails. After Jess departs, Rachel encounters Ella, who informs her that Ty was there. Rachel checks the surveillance footage and notices Jess speaking to someone off-screen. She pieces everything together. The next day, Rachel sees Palmer at her office. Palmer admits her mistake, revealing that Ty had promised to leave Rachel. Rachel walks away, informing her about Ty's involvement with Jess. Next, she meets Jess, acting normal. She tells her that Ty is setting her up and reveals that Ella has been hearing voices in her dreams. Jess admits she was alone with Ella, but Rachel vows to kill Ty once she finds him. At home, Rachel informs Dylan about Jess and Ty's deceit. She is completely certain Ty is at the cabin. Initially reluctant, Dylan allows her to go and agrees to look after Ella. As Rachel leaves, Jess watches and immediately calls Ferguson, warning him that Rachel plans to kill Ty. On her way to the cabin, Ferguson contacts Rachel, trying to stop her, but she ignores him. Roper tracks her location, and they rush to intercept her. Soon, Rachel arrives at the cabin and discovers Ty tied to a chair. She attempts to free him, but he warns that the cops will find him like this, making it look like she was behind his abduction. He mocks her predictability and boasts about framing her as a kidnapper. Rachel points out he could have killed her, but Ty admits he considered it. Instead, he figured a kidnapping charge would remove her from his and Ella's lives. Rachel insists he can't take Ella from her, but he claims the odds are stacked against her. She then threatens to kill him and ruin his plans, but Jess arrives. She unties Ty and hands him a gun. Jess accuses Rachel of destroying Ty's life, declaring they are soulmates. Rachel exposes how Ty used her while being involved with Palmer. Jess is stunned to learn Palmer is pregnant with Ty's child and that she isn't his only girlfriend. Enraged, Ty turns the gun on Rachel but suddenly shoots Jess instead, declaring he doesn't want her. Rachel lunges at him, knocking the gun loose. Ty fights back, but she manages to grab the weapon. As she aims at him, Ferguson and Roper arrive. Ferguson urges her to lower the gun, and as she does, Roper arrests and takes her away. Ferguson checks on Jess and finds her alive and conscious. As she whispers the truth about Ty, he attempts to flee, but Rachel stops him. Ferguson orders Roper to release Rachel and arrest Ty instead. Once Ty is taken away, Ferguson, ashamed of how he treated Rachel, apologizes, but she only asks to see her daughter. A few days later, life returns to normal. Rachel thanks Dylan for always standing by her. She leaves town with Ella, putting her house up for sale, and the movie ends here.